Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Singapore Injustice Podcast. I'm one of the co hosts, Kush, and this is Max, and today we're going to be taking a brief look into some of the injustices in Singapore for this series.
I read that the Temasek Foundation pledges 300,000 free meals for needy stricken workers by COVID-19.
Yeah.
And what the idea I want to communicate isn't as much this exact foundation doing this one thing. I think it's the general. I think it's the general attitude, and and you'll hear I'm going to outline a few other foundations with which students can work and volunteer some time for that make these meals. So I'm going to start off by describing the situation a little. So COVID has affected us and the CIS community, but we are lucky to be part of a community that is rather well off and has stability. Our parents, at the end of the day, mostly, still have a job that pays well enough for us to go to this amazing and incredible school, luckily. Thousands of people in Singapore, from Bangladeshi construction workers to helpers to the average Singaporean or foreigner, simply can't feed his or her family for reasons beyond his control and reasons because of COVID. So I'm looking more at exactly what COVID caused, because
Yeah, like a lot of layoffs, a lot of regular people losing their jobs, which is not ideal and it's very, very stressful.
I can
And,
yeah. Can't imagine having a job one day and the next day being told that you're laid off just because some important person in your company deemed you to be an ineffective allocation of money or resources. I think that's really sad that some people are pushed to side like that just to save money. So I'm gonna be since COVID has forced many to be in vulnerable positions. NGOs and other organizations, whether governmentally owned or not, have been trying to make the blow less hard by donating supplies, shelter, and most of all, and most importantly, food.
Yeah.
This leads us into a little segment about the Temasek Foundation and their incredible donations and deeds towards towards this good cause of trying their best to feed hungry migrant workers who are either having trouble finding a job or even despite having a job, having to deal with cuts in their
Salary.
salaries and in their just what they're allowed in a day.
Yeah.
So the Temasek Foundation is a foundation owned by the government, but considered relatively non-governmental because the government it's owned by the government. However, the government doesn't have lots of say in what happens, and
Yeah.
it's not like they're not they don't lead. It's owned, but they don't lead. So the organization has many investments in places all over the world, from purely business interests to investment opportunities. But they also have some investments that could be considered investments, could also be considered donations. Depends on how you want to put it. Yeah.
One sec. So investments. Tell us about what these investments are for. Like,
So the Temasek Foundation, despite in this case doing some good, is a foundation that has many business interests, such as maybe seeing an overseas company that might be beneficial for Singapore to be a part of.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're mostly interests like that, but
They also use that profits.
exactly. So that's what I was going to get into. They've pledged to donate more than a third of a million meals to the needy in times of COVID. They also outlined that the needy, quote, include and are mostly exclusive to the workers that migrated here to find a job and to work and support their families back home. This includes both helpers and migrant workers, as well as anyone else. It's just, if you need it, you can have it. And that's the idea. That's the ideology behind this donation. Mind you, that this donation, even like this, the articles that I researched this situation about were written only 2 weeks back. However, this had happened. The 300,000 meals, the donation by the Temasek Foundation actually happened in March. Since then, they've also offered to donate another 300,000 in May and 500,000 meals in July. So over the course of time, it's 500,000, 300,000, and 300,000. So that's 11. That's a million, and that's 1,100,000 meals that they've in total donated, which I think is very
Crazy.
fascinating. And it's and normally a company such as the Temasek Foundation does things out of pure business interest. This is one of the cases where someone up in somewhere in the company decided that it's necessary.
So Temasek Foundation, if I'm not wrong, if I recall correctly, it's a foundation that's part of a bigger company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a small venture on the side of a bigger company called Temasek Holdings, which is an investment company based in Singapore.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. So like the Temasek Foundation. Excuse my poor phrasing, poor wording. The Temasek Foundation, they're a philanthropic organization, but what they're owned by the Temasek Holdings, they're more of a business.
Yeah.
They're more of a business investment group than they are anything philanthropic. Anyways, okay, so the Temasek Foundation said that it wasn't about who eats the food, rather than that the food and the resources that they donate are being consumed. And they said, to quote them, it doesn't matter who eats the food, because it's for everyone who needs it, which I think is fairly beautiful and sums up the situation pretty well. There have been an incredible number of layoffs in Singapore due to the effects of COVID. Thousands of families have lost their primary source of income, as the unemployment rate has risen to its highest it's been in 10 years. The Temasek Foundation doesn't make these meals themselves. They actually donated the necessary money to make these meals to other foundations that I'd like to outline right now. These there are soup kitchens. There are soup kitchens / charity centers that provide mostly food and some other really important things that you need for like toothpaste or like shampoo, things that everyone has the right to have.
Exactly.
So these they donated. So the Temasek Foundation donated to
The
two
smaller,
groups. One was called the Giving Hearts Foundation, and the other one was called Free Food for All.
Oh yeah.
And actually, I have a fair bit of experience with the Giving Hearts Foundation. So basically, what they do is I know myself a lot about the Giving Hearts Foundation because I volunteered there multiple times. Their headquarters, well, not really headquarters. Their operations center is very small, very shabby looking building in somewhere in the east of Singapore, relatively far from the city center. And what they do there, at least when I volunteered, there were like 50, 60 volunteers, all doing jobs such as carrying boxes from trucks that companies have donated worth of goods, such as, for example, when I was there, I was part of me and my friend, we had to hop onto this truck that was going to drive to the Meiji distribution center. Meiji is the dairy product company, where they had donated, what was it? They had donated 3 pellets, so they're like, I think they're like
3 crates.
They're not crates, they're pellets. So it's like 1.5 meters times 1.5 meters.
Oh wow.
And that's like 2 meters high of soy milk. I myself hate soy milk, but I thought that was pretty interesting to see. So they donate soy milk. So these people that volunteer at Giving Hearts, they do jobs such as, I was with that truck and I helped load thousands of liters of soy milk onto this truck, load it off, and individually take out the individual boxes and stuff like that. It was like more labor intensive, and there are also jobs that you can do at Giving Hearts, such as cutting vegetables, cooking food. Granted, you need a little bit like of experience for cooking the food, and they need to know you, so you need to have been there a fair bit to get the privilege to cook the food with them. So I think that if anyone listening I'll put the necessary links in the description for the Giving Hearts Foundation and Free Food for All. If anyone listening is interested in spending a day doing good, then please go and click on those links and inquire about it, and see if it's something for you. Also, I'd like to add that the Giving Hearts Foundation, I was also luckily enough, I had volunteered one of my mornings. It was Saturday morning, 4 a.m. To go there and to prepare the food and then distribute the food. So basically, what they do is they make 2 meals in a day. So they make breakfast and dinner. Both they have a long list of addresses and places that they go to give the food,
Yeah.
and both at breakfast time and dinner time. Well, before those times, they spend hours making the food, cutting the vegetables, making the food, and everything, and then they started distributing. I was part of a delivery group, a delivery squad. We had like a full list of house numbers and addresses and places and camps we had to go to deliver these boxes of nice warm meals. So I woke up at 4, and then I went there. I was there like 4:30, and then I was helping cutting some vegetables, and then around 6 or 7, I went off in one of the other volunteers' cars, and we had a large amount of meals with us, and we drove around, and we just had a list of addresses we had to hit, and we just went to each of those addresses, and I literally took that little styrofoam box of food to the doors of the people that need it. And I think that what I did there, that service that I'd done, I think that that's something that many people should do regularly. But even if just doing it once, I think that makes a very big difference, because it gives you that insight, that understanding, and that empathy. Because I saw so many different types of people open those doors. Every single time I rang a doorbell, someone else would be behind it, and I think that was fairly iconic. And I think there's a lot to say about that. Anyway, so if anyone's interested in going to the Giving Hearts Foundation, and either you could donate money, you could donate your time by going there to volunteer. Oh, and free food for all, of course, both of which are going to be in the description. Then please do that, because I think that it is not only the doing something for the common good, for doing something good for people that need it. It can be considered what's the word? Some sort of self-improvement.
Yeah, like
I think it's like it builds your global perspective, your global understanding, and it gives you, I think, it grows empathy.
Yeah.
Now, every single time I walk down the road and I see someone that seems to be less well off, I can't even imagine how it might feel to be
helped.
To be in a position such as that.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's also another CAS opportunity.
Yeah.
Obviously,
So
I guess
that wraps up the end of my my segment and my part about the Temasek Foundation, the Giving Hearts, Free Food for All.
So the Temasek is what
Yeah.
donates to the Giving Hearts.
They have donated a large sum of money to these places. Yeah, so that wraps up my segment about the Temasek Foundation, Free Food for All, Giving Hearts, and how many unfortunate people have been affected by COVID. And that in turn also wraps up our first podcast of what we hope to be a fair bit.
It was focused a bit on migrant workers. Obviously, that was a bit coincidental, but there are also some people that face the most difficulties in our community.
That's 100% true. And it also focused on, well, my piece was partially focused on migrant workers. Yours was completely focused on migrant workers. But we also discussed two different aspects of the situations. Yes, like yours, they fall under the same broad category, but yours was about supporting someone at home and supporting a family, and it was more about the how do you put it? It was more about it was more individual, whereas um, my article and my situation that I had explained and my story was more about the broad sense of helping those who are dealt with an unfair injustice because of COVID, something they had no control over.
Yeah.
Helping them and allowing them to live another day.
Right, so we'll end it there. We can we can call this the migrant worker and needy edition. So that's our podcast. We talked about some really great CAS opportunities. We'll be cutting that into smaller segments on our YouTube channel. So if you're not able to watch the whole or listen to the whole podcast, we've created this plan where we're gonna be cutting the segments into some CAS opportunities and some informational regions.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's a PSA.
So if you don't have time to listen to our 45-minute to half an hour to 45-minute podcast every single time, which is completely understandable, after you've clearly listened to this one for 43 minutes and 9 seconds so far, but if you after having listened to this decided that this length or this amount of time isn't for you, you can just watch some of the clips. We're going to be editing out some key parts, some specific articles and points and connections that we make, so that people can, so that you listeners can listen to those without having to listen to 45 minutes of us rambling on.